Second book of Samuel, chapters 5 to 7 today, and as expected at the end of the previous video, this opens with David being made king of the whole of Israel, so the civil war is officially over. This section was kind of weird because it's one of those sort of sections you're reading it, it's just like, oh, there's a lot of weird detail and I don't really care about this, it's not very interesting. And then there's kind of a bombshell at the end, I think it's kind of a bombshell. And obviously I'm not quite sure what to do with that, inevitably. But it's certainly very interesting. You're just sort of bumbling along. Suddenly, whoa, okay, that's quite significant, I think. We'll see what you think anyway. So, from David being made king, he seems to celebrate this by going and attacking Jerusalem to drive the Jebusites out. There had already been an attack on Jerusalem back in Joshua, I'm sure it was, because Jerusalem was supposed to be given to some of the Israelites. So something must have happened in those, well, probably a few hundred years, actually, to be fair, where the Jebusites have moved in and David's like, not having any of that, we're going in to get them. So David goes in, attacks the city, takes it over, and then there's this confusing bit where he seems to rename Jerusalem City of David. I think that's the same thing, but then of course it's still called Jerusalem today, so it didn't stick very well. But then you also hear Christmas carols like Once in Royal David City, so which I presume therefore is referring to Jerusalem. So perhaps it's sort of like the Big Apple or something, and it's sort of interchangeable names. There's talk here that part of this is David gets together all the able-bodied men of Israel, the whole of Israel now, all 12 tribes. And then it mentions that that number is 30,000 people. You think back in Exodus, there were 600,000 people of fightingness. And now it's 30,000. So I'm not sure if something's going very wrong for the Israelites in terms of dwindling numbers, but that's where we are anyway. David anyway conquers the city, builds himself a nice palace, takes on some concubines, gets some more wives, has lots of children. One of whom is called Solomon, which I think might be relevant for later on, because I have heard of a Solomon at least, and I think they're related. It's then decided that the Ark of the Covenant should be moved from where it is in Judah, in Hebron I believe it was, up to City of David / Jerusalem. It's a weird story. On the way up there, so the Ark of the Covenant has been put on a cart so it can be drawn by oxen. And it says that one of these oxen stumble and then the Ark looks like it's going to fall off the cart. So a guy called Uzzah, U-Z-Z-A-H, don't know, Uzzah. This chap anyway, when the Ark is about to fall off the thing, it sounds like he grabs it to steady it. And God is very angry about this and kills him. So yeah, it sounds like the Ark would have fallen off otherwise, maybe. Or maybe not. Maybe it was just an excuse to touch it. Don't know, but never enough detail, is there? But either way, he touched the Ark of Covenant. God not happy, kills him. David sees this and it says it makes him angry, but it sounds like he's actually angry because it seemed unfair. Because he decides from this that he doesn't want the Ark of the Covenant near him where he's going to live, presumably because it seems dangerous that it could be. So it goes somewhere else for 3 months, which charming, isn't it? Oh, I don't want that thing near me, you have it over there. This sits there for 3 months anyway, and God blesses the household that it lives in. So then David decides, okay, it's time for him to have it back. David seems very happy about this, and he's dancing in front of it and all the rest of it. And as it comes into Jerusalem, he's dancing ahead, which it mentions that his wife, one of his wives, being the Saul's daughter wife, sees him from afar doing this, and he says that in her heart she despises him. Clearly that has something to do with the dancing, but you do wonder also if she's maybe despising him because she was married to someone else and he sort of nicked her. Not sure, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Anyway, David then speaks to his wife and she says, you're dancing around half naked, and describes it as vulgar. But David basically tells her to sod off, lighten up, and I'm just going to celebrate the Lord how I see fit. Okay, no, that's not going well there, clearly. We then have David in his palace, all sort of comfy and seems to be enjoying life. And it seems to occur to him that having the Ark of the Covenant in a tent somewhere just seems a little unbefitting, that he's a human in this grand palace and the Ark of the Covenant is sort of a physical manifestation of God or something, almost always treated that way. And it's in a tent. But then tied up with this, there's this prophet called Nathan, who we've never heard anything about before, I don't think, who turns up and gets a message from God, which he then comes and delivers to David. And this is where the bombshell comes in, because the message is that basically God's saying that after David has died, all of his descendants are going to go down the lines, and out of those will be a son of God, an actual son of God, as in God will be his father, and this son of God will bring about God's kingdom that will endure forever. I mean, that sort of sounds familiar, doesn't it? But then the weird part is that God says of this son that he's going to have, is that when he does wrong, I will punish him using men. So, yeah, it's a bit of a weird message, very strange. Anyway, basically, in the short version of that story, not a great deal happens. Obviously, David is made king. He decides to move house to Jerusalem, and obviously, presumably, lots of people are killed in this process. And then God drops a message to say that someone quite important is coming. In terms of the interesting points to pull out from that, I mean, the obvious elephant in the room is that last bit. I mean, it sounds like he's talking about Jesus, but we're talking 1,000 years before Jesus was born, and in a book that had to have been written long before Jesus existed. So it's not like someone could have written 2 Samuel after Jesus existed to try and make those two tie up. It's clearly a prediction that seems to link to that. I assume I've got that right. If anyone thinks I've maybe missed the point there, but I mean, Son of God seems pretty clear. But it's when he does wrong, I will punish him using men, which is the really odd part, because I thought the whole point of Jesus was that he was meant to be sinless. So he doesn't do anything wrong. And the point was that he died in place of human sins. So they weren't his own sins that he was killed for. So I don't know what to do with that, because on the one hand, it sounds like an amazing prophecy for something that's 1,000 years off yet. And on the other hand, it sounds like kind of close to something that was said to have happened, but with an inconvenient bit about talking about him doing wrong. So, because that doesn't seem to fit. Yeah, I don't really know what to do with that. But unfortunately, we're, say, thousands of years and hundreds of pages away from the New Testament yet in order to find out. But very interesting anyway. So what was starting as quite a weird and boring section turned actually into a very interesting and quite profound one, I think. So on we will go anyway to see if we can find out any more.